Hey everybody, welcome or welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. No intro video because this is kind of serious. And if you're like me, you hate clickbait titles. And I'm really hoping that you don't find this to be a clickbait video. You might have to stick around a little bit to understand what I'm talking about or the point of this video. But and then a little backstory, I got to take a few minutes because I believe it was in March of, right now it's beginning of July 2024. So at the beginning of March 2024, or around there, the I'm Josh V channel had the owners, I believe, of Big Boi, and they were releasing 2 new pressure washers in the US, and they were doing pre-orders. So I pre-ordered a new Washer Pro, and I think it came in around 650 bucks, whatever. I got a discount, and it was, and then with shipping, it wound up being around 700, something like that. So it was not a small purchase by any event. It was still a little bit cheaper than the AR Blue pressure washer, and the AR required 20 amp circuit, whereas this Big Boi here requires a 15. So it's supposedly a little bit more efficient on the power. And then obviously a Kranzla, you're talking 1,400 bucks. But anyway, so about a month later, this showed up, and on the same day it showed up, the Cars with Keav channel put out a video where he tested the new Washer Pro, and I'll have that video link below as well, because shout out to him for everything that he does for the detailing community. So he did a test, and he found that his numbers were lower than advertised when he was getting his testing, but he also found that with the 4.0 and sometimes even the 4.5 nozzles, that the pressure and output of the machine was actually kind of more in line with what we're looking for as detailers, as kind of like the optimum solution or the optimum output of the washer. So, but it was still lower than advertised. So a couple days later though, Cars with Keav, and I'll link that video as well, he put out another video showing that you can adjust the regulator on the pressure washer, and it's the part that I'm pointing to right now. There's a cap, and then below that cap, there's like a lock ring. You'll see in this photo that I'm pointing to, there's a lock ring under there that you could turn to actually increase the pressure. So now at this point, I hadn't even touched mine. It was still in the box, everything. So it took me 3 to 4 weeks to finally open it up. And in fact, as you can see right here, this is an amazing unit. It is super heavy, it is solid, it's got a huge motor on it, it's got an amazing pump. On the back of it, as you can see in the photo, it's got a nice thing where you could put your nozzles on the back and store them. It's just an overall well-built, heavy-duty machine. Nice long cord with it. I think it's like a 15-foot cord. But anyway, it is just a fantastic unit. So I originally started using it. I didn't adjust anything. I just started using it, testing it. And it was testing, I was getting around 2 gallons a minute, something like that, out of the stock nozzles. And I went and bought in fact, you'll see right here, I bought this Ridge washer pressure gauge because I wanted to test, number one, if I made that modification that was suggested on the Cars with Keav channel, if it did any pressure differential, and I wanted to see what I was getting stock. So now with the, so I bought this. Now at the same time I bought this, I also bought a nozzle kit at my local detail supply from Veloci, and it came with, they're not guarded, they're just plain nozzles. And so I was using those with, and let me show you this, all my testing and everything, I only have this one gun. It's an SGS 35, I believe, from MTM. Yeah, it's from MTM. And I generally use the 40. But in my testing, I found that I was getting about 1,000 PSI out of the 4.0 from the Veloci. And when I was testing in the bucket, I was getting about 2 1/8 gallons. So well above that 2.1 that we all like. I mean, 2 1/8 is, that's like 2.15, 2.12, something like that. And you'll see in the photo that right there, that's what I'm getting per minute. in all my tests that I've done with these Veloci nozzles. Every single one. Now, at that point, I did not have an amp meter hooked up. I was just using stock configuration on the washer pump, everything. And so, but I really wanted to see if I could get even more output. So what I did is I ordered an amp meter, and I started testing. And when I plugged in the amp meter, what I found was, in fact, you'll see right here, with the 4.0 nozzles, I'm only drawing about 13 amps, which to me is, holy cow, that is fantastic from a unit that puts out over 2 gallons a minute, number one. And number two, 13 amps is fantastic from a unit that, and as you'll see in this photo, puts out near 1,000 PSI at that same GPM output. So fantastic numbers, everything. So I figured, okay, I got my amp meter. So I adjusted the lock ring that I showed you earlier that Cars with Keav mentions. I adjusted it by the quarter turn. And what I found with the Veloci nozzles, it didn't increase the output at all. And it didn't even increase my pressure that I could tell any noticeable difference. So then what I did is something seemed weird to me. So I increased it, I turned it another quarter turn. And to my surprise, it didn't make any difference. There was no noticeable improvement at all. My test numbers were all the same. So I figured I would stop there. Stopped right there, and I moved the pressure washer to another outlet so that it was always out of the way, because then I wouldn't have to keep moving it and putting it in the doorway, everything. Made sure my hose, everything reached. So, and I tested it there. I plugged it into another outlet. It's on the same breaker, 20 amp breaker, still drawing the same 13 amps. So everything was great, fine and dandy. And then I went and bought, because I didn't want to take the chance that these Veloci nozzles, that for some reason one would come off and smack the car or smack a car and chip the paint or anything like that. So I ordered these 4.0 ridge washer nozzles, came in a set of 5, and these are they cost me 25 bucks for an entire set of 5, versus if I was to buy one of these from Veloci or the Veloci brand, they're like $30 for a single one, or maybe 32 bucks, something like that. They're outrageously expensive. So I figured, hey, this is great. I bought these ridge washer nozzles, and I started using them. Unbeknownst to me, they caused the amp draw to spike on my pressure washer. And what am I talking about? I plugged back in the amp meter on one day, and I started doing a test again because I wanted to actually do a video about what I had done to the pressure washer. And when I looked at the amp meter using these, I was drawing over 16 amps with the modification that I made, adjusting the lock ring there by half a turn. My 14 amp or 13 amp pressure washer was now drawing 16 amps using these, and I couldn't understand why. So again, I went through my whole test process of filling the bucket, timing it, 1 gallon, etc. And what I found was that there was a huge difference between the normal Veloci nozzles in the 4.0 and the ridge washer guarded nozzles also in the 4.0, or labeled 4.0. In fact, as you could see right here in this photo, the Veloci nozzles clearly labeled 4.0, and in this photo, the ridge washer nozzles clearly labeled 4.0. So they're supposed to be the same, but in my testing now, I was getting, with the ridge washer nozzles, 16 amps, and with the Veloci nozzles, 13 amps. Something was not right. So I started doing my bucket testing again. And with my bucket testing with the ridge washer nozzles, I was getting only around 2 to just over 2 GPM, whereas with the Velocis, I was getting the 2 1/8. And then also when I hooked my pressure gauge back up, the ridge washer pressure gauge, I'm reading over 1,200, sometimes 1,300 PSI with the ridge washer, and again, only 1,000 PSI with the Veloci nozzles. So then what I decided to do is I grabbed the nozzles from the stock, that came stock with the Big Boi, the 3.5s. As you could see, it says 3.5 right on the nozzle. I plugged that in. And again, on my amp meter, 16 amps. So that led me to believe that the ridge washer nozzles are not really 4.0, that they're 3.5. So this leads me to the whole hook of this video, in that you need to be really careful about what accessories you buy, and you need to test them. Please test them. Buy an amp meter. So what happened though is I turned the pressure gauge back on the machine, on the Big Boi machine. I turned the pressure back to the original stock setting. And as you could see now in the video with the Veloci nozzles, I'm still drawing 15 amps with these. And the same thing happened with the stock 3.5s. It went up to about 15 amp draw. Whereas, as you see in this photo again, the Veloci with the 4.0 Veloci nozzles, again, I'm only around 12 to 13 amps. So, huge difference there. But I would have never known this had I not had that amp meter. And the amp meter, the one that Cars with Keav linked, and I'll have that link below. I'll have everything linked below. Had I not bought that pressure or that amp gauge, I would have never known, number one, that the ridge washer nozzles were not accurate 4.0 nozzles. And had I never bought the pressure gauge, I would have never realized that there was some weird thing going on between them. So the moral of the entire video here is, number one, know what you're supposed to draw on your unit. Whether it's an AR, a Kranzla, whatever it is, know what you're supposed to draw. Because if you overamp things, the motor is going to get hot. The circuitry may not survive. You may do damage to your machine. And if you're spending $500, $600, $700, $1,500 on a new Kranzla, whatever it is, you don't want to ruin that. You don't want to have to go a month and a half later and go repair it, whatever it is. Buy an amp meter, check it out. If you buy new accessories like I did, because my original tests were with the Veloci nozzles, with the pack that I bought. My original tests were with this. It was fantastic. My test results were great. Everything was working fine. I was getting over 2 1/8 gallons GPM. Everything was great. And so when I bought these ridge washer guarded nozzles, I thought, hey, this is fantastic now. I just plugged them on. But then when I found out, when I saw, when I decided to do a video and do my testing again, and I saw this huge discrepancy of, wait a minute, this is what I was getting before, this is what I'm getting now. And then I started digging into the testing. It's really about, don't just trust that you're going to get what the accessories say, are labeled as. Test it for yourself. If you buy new, whatever it is, test it for yourself. If you buy a second pressure washer, if you replace it, check your amp draw. Just make sure it's the same as what you had before. If you have a setup at home and you decide to go into mobile detailing and you buy a setup for your van, test it out. Don't just assume that the new nozzles that you buy are the same exact ones as the old ones and that everything's going to be the same. Test them out for yourself. Do that testing. It took me 15-20 minutes to do all the testing, but it was worth it in the end, because I know now that my equipment is running cooler. It's running at 13 amps. I'm going to send back these obviously, to me, these are garbage, these ridge washer nozzles, and I'm going to leave a review. I'm going to send these back because these are clearly not 4.0 nozzles. They perform exactly as the same as the stock 3.5s. The output's exactly the same. The pressure readings are exactly the same. They're clearly mislabeled. You can't trust it. You need to test what you're getting from these nozzles. So hopefully the title of the video was not completely misleading. It wasn't clickbait for you. Hopefully you learned something out of this. Make sure, buy 2 accessories for your pressure washer. It will make all the difference to you. Trust me, over time is the amp meter and the pressure gauge. No matter what, buy those 2 things. They're cheap enough. Again, the pressure gauge cost me a whole 20 bucks. All right, the amp meter, I got it on sale. It was I think $9.99. They had a sale the day that I looked at it. Normally I think it's maybe 15 bucks or something. Super cheap. If you have an AR, if you need a 20 amp, they also have a 20 amp version that costs a little bit more. Buy one of them, buy the 20 amp version, and then you'll be set for whatever pressure washer you install. But whatever it is, those two accessories are must-have accessories for your pressure washer. Without a doubt, that's what you're gonna, at a minimum, that's what you're gonna wanna do. Go grab yourself a bucket, one of those clear buckets that you can test and see how much output you're getting. Because that also verified that the nozzles were different orifice sizes. So, having said that, guys, hopefully you didn't find this to be clickbait. Hopefully you found this to be helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. And if you have tested this stuff, if you tested the ridge washer nozzles that I'm talking about here, and you found it to be different than mine, or if you found it to be the same, leave me a comment down below. You know, if you found this video informative, leave me a comment. You know, let me know that this really helped you, you know, valuable information, and maybe you went out and bought that amp meter and you know, your stuff is running good. Let's hear it. You know, that really, you know, we want to help the community here. We don't want to see people burning up their stuff. We don't want to see people wasting their money. I mean, car washing is supposed to be fun, but it's supposed to help save you some money over going to the car wash. It's supposed to protect your car more. So anyway, thank you for watching, and you have a nice day. Keep it clean and protect your investments. You have a great day. Bye.